there. Welcome to our podcast, Africa to the World, where we tell African stories to transform people's lives. I am Yvonne.
And I'm Shami.
And we are your hosts. We are sitting today with Moses Machipisa, who's going to be telling us his story about how he is living out the theme of Ubuntu in his life and how he is living out this theme and transforming lives and impacting people in different ways and different aspects.
Moses, welcome to our podcast. Thank you for taking the time to sit down and have a conversation with us. And we're so hopeful that this is going to be a fruitful one and people are going to learn one or two things about how they can play their role as far as Ubuntu is concerned. So, just to kick us off, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who is Moses?
Thank you so much, Shami and Yvonne. I'm honored to be here. So, as an introduction, who is Moses? So, Moses is many things. By profession, I'm an educator. I trained as a teacher. That's my forte. It's always been in education. But I've been actively involved in different initiatives. Mostly in youth leadership development, which is something which I'm strongly interested in. I'm also a father and a husband. So I'm married to my wife, lovely wife Charlene, and we've got a son. His name is Mikhail. So in a nutshell, that's me. I'm available for this interview for you to ask any area which would be of interest to you.
Thanks, Moses. So I want to find out, and I've been dying to know, how and when did your interest in the Ubuntu philosophy begin?
That's an interesting question. So I think my interest in Ubuntu started a long, long time back. Um, at home, I grew up with my mother, and she always emphasized having Ubuntu or Hunu, as we call it in Shona, which is the local vernacular. So, growing up, it was about how do you treat yourself, how do you treat others, how do you show respect to your elders. All those aspects triggered in me, an interest in Ubuntu in terms of as a way of life. So it's in the upbringing. But in terms of getting to really understand Ubuntu, in terms of its theoretical concepts and how it is as a philosophy, I think the interest really started around 2019 with the advent, of the COVID pandemic. Um, and just before that, I was just searching for, you know, a local way of how we relate to others and looking at that in the context of leadership. As you may be aware, here in the African context, one of the challenges that we face is with leadership. And as a practitioner who has been in the leadership development sphere for quite a long time, what I've realized is that sometimes the problem is we do not relate with the concepts of leadership because they are a bit alien or foreign to us. So in early 2019, I started a search in terms of how do we, have a contextualized African way or perspective to leadership. And Ubuntu, beyond just being a lifestyle, as I'd indicated, something that I grew up with, I also realized it's something that, can inform a form of leadership, which we can understand from our African context. So that's what really sparked an interest from upbringing, but also to get to understand how we can solve the leadership challenge here in Africa.
Okay, there's so many questions that I want to ask. You've spoken a lot about leadership. Can you tell us about some of the opportunities that you came across or the platforms that you came across for developing as a leader within the context of Ubuntu.
Thank you. So I think I've really been privileged to be exposed to different leadership programs that have helped me in my journey and to contextualize, this aspect of Ubuntu. So, just as to say from the start, I've always searched for, for life's meaning and service. How do I contribute, or how do I be of value, or how can I be of support to my fellow uh, community members, for example. So that also made me someone who wanted to find out platforms where I can actually go and get trained as a leader. And some of those platforms which have been really helpful is I was part of a scholarship program under an organization called Higher Life Foundation. So I was part of the Capernaum Scholarship, and that scholarship also we were taught a lot of leadership skills, and that was for my college, and that became something that really helped me to develop my skills as a leader in college, and consequently I joined the SRC, the Student Representative Council, when I was in college, teacher training. But the other platforms that I also participated in on leadership development was another, which was the inaugural youth participation in governance training, which was done by an organization called Action Aid in Lusaka, Zambia. That also helped me to understand, on governance issues, but from an African perspective. I was also part of the school leadership fellowship, which was a really terrific program, which I also learned in terms of leadership. And that was, I think, in 2019, yeah, somewhere there. Then in 2021, I was part of the Apolitical Leadership Academy, which is also another program. But specifically to Ubuntu, I was also part of the Ubuntu Leaders Academy, an organization which I'm now serving as the secretary, executive secretary for Africa. So a series of trainings in South Africa, and they've got a really terrific program which is aligned to Ubuntu in terms of some of the thematic areas that like empathy, building bridges, resilience, and service. So that's those are some of the platforms which have helped to shape me in terms of my engagement with Ubuntu.
So, Moses, those are like a lot of different programs, a lot of different platforms that you've been on, and someone who's listening might then even ask, so is it possible for your ordinary person to be living out this ideal of Ubuntu when you've gone through so much training that's led to you being at the point you are today?
Okay, so Ubuntu is a worldview. It's a way of looking at the world. Um, the dominant worldviews. For example, if I look at the Western thought, it's I think, therefore I am, right? So and that's like a pivot of how the Western thought is aligned, and a lot of people talk about things which are individual. We talk about maybe the ideas of human rights and all those things, but it's mostly from an individual perspective. But Ubuntu, on the other hand, it says, "I am because you are," and other people would put it, "I am because we are." The idea there is the worldview says I'm not a complete person, but I need other people to complete me. I'm only complete when I participate in relationship. Um, and this is what the essence of being a human from the Ubuntu perspective entails. So in that context, Ubuntu becomes a way of how do you look at how you live your life, how you relate to others, right? So it's not of course it's an idea which has very strong like philosophical framing and background with its key areas or key values, if one can put it that way. But in a very simplistic way, Ubuntu is just an appreciation that you are part of a community, right? You are a branch in the tree of the human family. We are all branches of the same tree, and as human beings, regardless of our ethnicity, our tribe, our religions, uh, our religious affiliation or political affiliation rather, we at the basic belong to this one human family, which only works when there's coexistence and interdependence. In the words of Desmond Tutu, he says, if you are someone who is completely, independent, or someone who does not require anyone's help, then you are a subhuman in that context, because humans were meant for complementarity, right? We complement each other, we share relationships, and it is in that relating to one another that we become human, or we become complete. So as simple as that, I am because you are. Then how we empathize with others. So it's a how we serve others. That becomes some of the things that are integral to the Ubuntu way of life, if I can put it. And it's not a new idea. It's an idea which has been the foundation of society in itself. So this is the idea that one can take and one can actually then use as a lens for viewing the world, and also how to engage and to act upon the world in a way that is relational. So I think that's Ubuntu.
Yeah. So, Moses, you spoke a lot about us belonging to a family, that I am because we are. So, how would you say that you are living out the spirit or the philosophy of Ubuntu in your own personal life? Given that I read somewhere on your profile where you say you call yourself a radical intellect. How are you, as a radical intellect, living out the spirit or the philosophy of Ubuntu?
Okay, I think a commitment to serve is one of the things that has given me purpose in life, if I put it that way. And there's also been some, in a way, how I reflect Ubuntu. Earlier on, I think just before I got married, when I was around, I think 27, I sort of made a decision to say, or to look and to reflect and to say, what do I want my life to be remembered for? That was one of the key questions which I was asking myself. Um, Sometimes we define our lives in different scopes and contexts. Sometimes it's about, success. This is what I want to achieve. Um, so for me, I think the foundation was like, I want to build a legacy of some sort. That's what I wanted to do. But a legacy which entails how I impacted the lives of other people. So that became something which I always thought and to be central to my purpose, to leave a legacy that will inspire other young people or other generations to serve and to impact their communities. So that's maybe a foundation for who I or how I live out Ubuntu in my daily life. So that commitment to serve, and for me, it has been looking at a community, right? So, as I liked when you said on my profile, which is an old blog where I used to call myself the radical intellectual. For me, where that came from was like I always thought, ideas, could change the world, and I always, for the longest time, wanted to change things in a big way, right? For example, being involved in activist circles and a lot of things aligned to discussions and debates on how can we change the politics of the day, how can we develop a more you know more spaces for young people, especially in the African continent, to participate in public office and all those things, which were well and fine, and still I advocate for such things. But I realized, after a bit of a time, that sometimes to really make change and to make impact, it has to start at a very smaller level and grow. So hence living out Ubuntu from in my family setup, and for now in my community. So what I've been trying to do is to say, how do I become of service, right? How do I serve my community? How do I use the talents and gifts which God has given me to empower others? How do I use the skills which I have to empower others? And for me, it has it been in two ways. Because, as I said, I'm an educator by by training. So I've done a lot in my professional care, in my career, to in the education sector. So the things which I thought I could be of service was to use that knowledge and skill, to empower the most marginalized places, which is in a rural setting where I'll share more about that project. Then the other part is on developing, young leaders, which is also something that I've been involved in. So I that has also been another pathway for me to live out Ubuntu, in terms of how do I also empower the next generation, and also at a community level. It might grow in terms of maybe in the next 10 years, or I might have a bigger place where I could have and say this is my sphere of influence. But for now, I've realized that when you want to live out Ubuntu or live out the value of serving others or servant leadership, it has to start in a small space. So that's what I've been trying to do.
That's amazing. I think I liked two things I stood out from what you just said was that you plant the seed. So you start small. You plant a seed and allow that seed to germinate and grow into a tree. And I also like the fact that you mentioned servant leadership, because that's the most amazing way that you can actually impact and cause the kind of radical intellectual change that you like to cause in a community. I like those. I really like to do. Oh, when I saw that on your profile, I was like, I love this, because radical intellectual change is what we need. So when you have that in the mix, when you are planting seeds and you're also causing radical and intellectual change, that's just amazing. So please tell us about Chipochashe and how that project aligns with your values, because that's one of your projects that you were mentioning just before I asked you this question, right?
So Chipochache is something which is very, very close to my heart, and It's a project which we started together with my wife. It really took flight during the COVID era. So it's a school project. We started a school in a rural community called Dema, which is about 50 kilometers outside Harare, which is where I'm connecting from tonight.
Amazing.
So the project is a school where we have got an infant school, and currently we've got ECDA to grade 2, and that's we've got about 84 learners that we have at the school. And of those 84 learners, about 12 of them now are on full scholarship from the school that we also assist. So these are orphaned children from the community, and a few who come from vulnerable contexts. The school also has some projects that we have for sustainability. We've got a nutrition project that we have where we've got a vegetable garden, we've got poultry, so we've got layers, we've got broilers. Then we also have a grinding mill, and we've got a small tuck shop at the school. So these projects are meant to make the project sustainable. But in we've got also a bore and a community water point that we have for the community to actually come and get water. My wife Charlene is also doing a project with the women in arts and crafts, so beadwork, then also using cloth and other recycled material to make some artistic pieces, which they then sell, and also some other agriculture and sustainable livelihood projects that they are also working on. So that's Chipochashe. But in terms of when it started, so we had a family land that we had. I bought it in 2016. So it was very dormant, just a structure which we had just completed with just the roof, but no windows and that. So it was just a project which I said, let's have some way we can do maybe projects in the future and see what will become of it. So it was quite dormant for the longest of time until 2019. We have some friends who from a foundation called the Ruben Fernandez Foundation, who then started to support us for the project. Then we decided, and just to give us a context, why in particular we chose an infant school. So here where I'm currently in Dema, the closest school is 6.5 kilometers if you use the shortest route, primary school. So you can imagine the other one is about 8 kilometers, the other one is almost 10. So those are the public schools, and they are very, very far. So when I was visiting this other time, I noticed that a lot of the very little kids were out of school. So it was something which was at the back of my mind. When I asked why, it was then revealed to me that by one of the parents that the schools here, even like the kids, they go to grade 1 when they are 8 years, most of them, because that's when they can be able to walk the distance. So that was a challenge within the community, that we then said, how can we bridge this? And that's when I gave the land as well as the small house that we have to start as a school. So fast forward to now, that school, because it was in the COVID time and in the COVID era, and we had catalytic support from the Ruben Fernandez Foundation, which was support with funding for the bore, for the solar, because the solar bore, for the perimeter fence, and for the refurbishment of the house. So it was a very small two-class building that they supported us. Then we also had staff support, then some funds for a scholarship. But at that time, because of COVID and the interruptions of school, because our project also had a nutritional, has a nutritional concept where we feed the kids at the school. At that particular time, because school was closed, we had some savings. So from those savings that we had, we decided to say, and the classes were already filled because there was so much need in the community. So we started with 15 students. Just a few weeks later, it was around 24, and just the other a few weeks later, it was almost 35. And when the education inspectors came, and it was at the time of COVID, then we're like, this can't work because of COVID. So we then decided to say, when the schools were closed, let's invest in building another block. So we took some of those savings, and we also started putting in what we were getting. Both of us were working different jobs, and it was still remote, and for me it's still remote at that time. So we then put in the funds that we had, and we started building a larger block. So we completed the block with a capacity for about 100 students, which is now where we have the yeah. So we now have the students, a fully fledged block where we actually have our classes, and kids being in there. The other part is maybe just to we then made a decision together with my wife, because the project had also grown, to say it's not working for us to be far from, because we used to drive from Harare coming to Dema every now and then. But we then made a decision once we had the block to come and stay, so that we could be hands on the project. So we're renting in Harare, in a in a great neighborhood. So it was a huge change to come here in the in a rural place. But we did try to make it a bit comfortable, and I had also the support of my wife. So we then came here in Dema, so that we could see how we could build the project. And from the savings that we had from the rentals that we were paying where we were staying, we also said we are going to commit this to further the project. So as I speak, we are building a larger block, right, which will take the school to complete
Wow,
primary school.
amazing.
So this is a bigger project that we then started. But also just to say, this hasn't been our effort alone. We've had tremendous support from different stakeholders. For example, from with a friend, her name is Monica in Portugal, Monica Melo, Rochai Melo, who has also been supporting us, and friends from the another organization called Dona Juda, which is in Portugal. Locally, we've also had support from the local Portuguese embassy to support the project as well. But we've also been, putting in what we can, so that the project grows. So that's in a in a long way the project that we have in Dema.
That's amazing, Moses. I love what you're doing with Chipo Chashi. It's I when you were talking, I was just thinking about the community water source, and I was just thinking that you have made Chipochache a place where the community can gather and they can experience the spirit of Ubuntu. You helping these young kids get an education and bridging that distance that they have to travel to school, and further on going on to provide nutritional supplements, which is a very important thing for the development of a child. That's amazing. I'm really loving this. And I wish you nothing but the best with Chiposhashe, and let Chiposhashe grow. We want to see that school to be like a big school, a big primary school that supports that community, and supports the development of that community. So you mentioned that it's so amazing that you mentioned that you work with your wife on your projects. Is this something that you always had dreamed of, or it's something that just came together, or what really happened?
So it's very interesting. It's an interesting question. If I can reflect back on my first date with my wife, Charlene, we had met. We met because we were discussing a project which she wanted to do with young girls. That was a long time back. So that was our first date. Discussing in terms of she wanted to empower girls with this project, which is some of the work that she's doing here currently.
Okay.
So that gives you a context in terms of how we started, with this idea of how we can be of service. I think that's where we connected with the different projects. And this has been something that we've always done. I think even when we're in a relationship, when we got married, uh, in the different spaces that we have been, to say how can we support others, how can we uh, see something come alive, uh, commit ourselves to something which is larger than us, if I can put it that way. So I'm really privileged that I have someone who really truly supports what we are doing, because as I said, it's been a journey of sacrifice. It's been a journey which has also had its hardships, to develop, to move, to change where the trajectory of your life. So some of us who, when you grow up, you would think I would want to have, a nice place in the urban area where I can stay, have, some, the comforts that come with it, pursue that, and also, our career in that direction. But coming here has been a bit different, because the environment is different. But through the support that she has given me, it has made a lot of things quite easier, to share this vision and to watch it grow. Yeah, it's been a journey which has also its down times where you feel a bit low when things are not working as they should.
Yeah.
This project also has come in with a lot of testimonies, but also a lot of trying times, because we also have a staff complement that we have of 7 people from the community who depend on the project. And you can imagine, with sometimes with the hardships, even those parents that we expect to pay, sometimes because the community that we are in is quite is a struggling community. So sometimes you also face the bills. You've got to pay salaries, and things are not so well and all that. But having her by my side as a pillar of strength, and also believing in the vision that we have, and supporting together as a couple, and pushing through the different episodes that we get as part of the seeing this vision come to life has been really something that has kept us going. So yeah, this is something that we have built together, and that we are watching grow together. And it's something that has also brought us, I think, closer together. With the fun moments as well as the trying times. It's been a great adventure.
Moses, what came to mind when you were speaking was partnering in purpose for me. That's what stood out clearly in my mind. I was like, this is amazing. It's amazing to find someone you can partner with in purpose, in doing, and who can also help you carry the vision, and doing things that impact people's lives at this level.
Yvonne took the words right out of my mouth. But besides this whole bit of partnering in purpose, what stood out for me the most, or one of the things that stood out for me the most, was us taking a step back and redefining what success looks like. Because a lot of the times, I think when we live out our lives, we live them out based on the ideas of success that we've seen around us, the things that we've grown up around. And as you've rightfully said, it was a very big adjustment, but it comes with understanding to you what does success look like. And I love how you said you took time to really sit and think, what do I want my legacy to be? And I think that's a very good marker, that's a very good compass point for us to have as individuals, to have a bigger picture that we're working towards. Would you have any advice for people who are doubting that it works to start with something very small? I mean, at this point, I don't think we can still call your project small. As far as I'm concerned, like, you are on the right trajectory. You've moved from having that two building structure to now being able to house 100 plus children.
Yeah, so very, very interesting. And, I wish I had learned this quite earlier on in life. You know, starting small, starting where you are with what you have, is something that, really, really works. Because a lot of things, there are things that are in the domain of our control, right? Things that we can control in our setting, in our environment every day, small things. And if we faithful in trying to to do our best, or to try to change those small things that we can, it helps us in two ways. I think it develops a habit within us to be proactive in changing things in practical ways, right? So as I said, when I was my younger self, I was sort of the ideas person. But you can have the best ideas, but if you can't implement them, they are not worth much. But to implement, even if it's a good idea, it has to go down to the smallest unit, and to the smallest thing that you can change. So change in itself, I believe, is a habit, right? It starts in small things. I was listening to this I think it was a motivational podcast. This general who was saying, if you want to change the world, start by making your own bed, right? So you start changing the small things that you can. Then sooner or later you find out you can then do big things, right? Um, it's about growth. So I always say I wish I knew this earlier, because it also gives you time to grow and to learn. So for me, also, as I said, this journey, when we started small, it's also been a journey of stewardship and building trust. As I said, there are a lot of people that have also empowered, put their hand into the work that we are doing. And how that has happened is, someone can trust you to with, for example, they can give you maybe $100, all right, or maybe it's 1,000 to do something. And if you are you can be a steward in small things. Someone can then trust you with more, right? You can get more. So I think it's that part in my Christian faith. It's about uh, the proverb, or the story of the talents, right? Being faithful in the small things, then you can actually see those things grow. So I believe, as two things. You develop the habit, for you to change, because to change small things, then that grows, you can find yourself doing greater things. Then the second thing is about growing in stewardship, uh, also being someone who can be entrusted with bigger things. So when you start small, um, internally you grow, and externally with the people, because you can't do great things alone, right? You also build the credibility. So that's how I see, if someone wants to do something big, you have to really go to the smallest, of that thing. If you For me, it's a school, because I trained as a teacher. That's what I know. But if someone is a doctor, for example, they start their small surgery, they grow that, they can then do great things. If someone has a background in something else, they start something small. Or if someone wants to lead a nation, they have to start by leading a community. That's how I see it. Because when you grow, you also learn a lot of things. You make mistakes along the way, which is a good thing, because it's part of the learning. But it also, develops you. You grow a thick shell. You become resilient to some of the challenges that you face. So yeah, that's how I see it. You start small, you grow, but consistency also is the key, in terms of how you grow.
And that really makes me think about blooming where you're planted and embracing the things that make you unique, embracing the things that you're passionate about, that you're talented at, because you've mentioned, all these different ways that someone could start to have an impact in their community just from what they already do on a day-to-day basis. And I think that's really amazing. It's so practical. And I do hope that people grab hold of that. And so, whilst you were talking, you also mentioned stewardship, you mentioned your Christian faith. And so I want to bring us back to a previous statement that you mentioned. And you said that it's been a journey of many testimonies, along with, the difficult times that you've had. So can you tell us how your Christian faith has been a part of the journey? How important has it been, actually, as a part of this journey?
So the Christian faith, aspect has been key and central, to this journey. Because if I were to define, Ubuntu, as you indicated, in a Christian context, uh, you know, Jesus was asked at one point, what is the greatest law, right? And he says two things, right? The first is, love your God, with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, right? Love the Lord your God. Then the second one is interesting, and it speaks to the issue of how we relate with others, which other people then call the golden rule. Do unto others as you'd want them to do unto you, right? How do we relate? That's Ubuntu. How do we relate with others? The reciprocating of goodwill. So for me, in my faith, or journey of faith, this has been the key area. How do I, you know, inculcate, especially within the young people, that sense of doing good to others, you know? how do we build communities that are pivoted on this idea that we ought to do others to others as we expect them to do unto us. So that's one part of it. And especially here, if you come with the kids at the school, that's what we teach them as well. Along with the curriculum, but we also teach the idea of values, right? But also, this project has really been a journey of faith, as I said, and it's been something that even the word chipochashi, right? There are two ideas which came with that word. I like the word. I loved the word chipo because that was my mother's name, right? So I grew up with my mother, and chipo was her name. But for the school, it was not about it, uh, but about you know a giver, God the giver, who gave us a gift, right? So we then decided, let's call it Chipochashi, you know, because this is a gift from God. So the faith, even when we talk about the foundational scripture of what we are doing, has been Isaiah 60, yeah, which is arise and shine, which has also been something that we have also looked at as something which is key for what we do. So the journey of faith has been in how we want to transmit the values of our faith, but also how we believe this project has also been something that has been a gift from God to the community. To I always look at the kids and say, you never know, maybe we'll get the next president from these kids, or someone who do great things, who get a doctor, a lawyer, yeah, someone who empower or transform a generation. So for me, it's that. So for us also, both Charlene and myself, this has also been become a sort of a calling of some sort.
Wow. That's so amazing. And I'm just so encouraged by that because a lot of the times, as a people, as Christians, we look at the world around us, and the first thing that we do is highlight all the negatives. So, oh my gosh, there's so much corruption. Oh, the leaders aren't doing what they should be doing. Kids are just growing up in the most ridiculous settings in some instances. And so we have a very pessimistic view of life. We have a very pessimistic view of the future. And what I've gotten from this conversation with you is just that there is so much hope. There is so much room to make a difference. As much as we look around and it seems like the world is going in the wrong direction, we have a role to play, or there is a potential role for us to play. And that's by um, teaching our children values, the right type of values that can help to make a difference in tomorrow. And so I'm going to allow us to wrap up. I don't know, Yvonne, if you have any closing remarks, or Moses, if you have any closing remarks.
Okay, so just to say thank you for this opportunity to share, but also just as an encouragement to others to say, Ubuntu is a gift that we have as as African people to also share with others. But sometimes, if we don't practice ourselves, we might miss out on on the gift. So I believe that if we have this idea and we live it out in our leadership as well, being servant leaders, looking out for the welfare of others, we can really transform and solve some of the challenges that we have on the continent. So just as an encouragement to young people to to live out Ubuntu, and yeah, I think that's all I would say. And be of service in their communities. That's the only way that we can transform Africa, rather than, of course, a lot of things are bad, but let's do something about it in the small ways that we can. And that's planting the seed.
And that's a very, very good place for us to end. It's been such a great session. Yvonne and I have taken away so much from the discussion today, and I will just leave our listeners with this. You yourself may not be a leader. You may not feel like you've been called into a leadership role, but just think about how you could be raising tomorrow's leaders. So, as you go about your parenting or just interacting with young people, just try and keep that at the back of your mind to say, what kind of values can I pass on to this young person in a way that they're going to have a positive impact on our future. So, from myself, on behalf of Africa to the World and Yvonne, thank you so much, our listeners, for joining us on this episode. And